This is the Dog Savant Podcast with your host, Brett Endies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dog Savant Podcast. I am Brett Endies. I'm your host. I am a Los Angeles-based dog trainer. The purpose of this podcast is to share my experience and understanding of dog behavior with you, a hopeful dog owner, dog enthusiast, another trainer, or even if you are a client who wants some supplemental information to help with the work that we are doing together in the real world. I always get through this in the beginning of the podcast, and today is no different. So please don't forget to rate, review, share, subscribe, follow me on social media. I'm not too active on it, but still it helps. Lets me know that you're listening. This podcast is helping you. I love your feedback. If you have any questions, don't forget to email me, dogtrainingla@gmail.com. And even if you have some feedback just to help improve the podcast, or things, the subject matter you'd like to hear about, that's what that's for. If you're in the Los Angeles area and you'd like quality dog training, you've been failed by the Purely Positive movement, I'm happy to help. My website is dogtrainingla@gmail.com. Okay, so welcome to new listeners. Anyone who's been listening kind of knows the deal. It's a lot of dog training information, a little bit of a rant here and there. You can always hear in the background, I got some car and background noise. The quality of these podcasts is not the best, but I hope the information and content is good and helpful. But that's where we're at. I'm a busy person. I'm seeing a lot of dogs in the real world, which is going to be a big topic of discussion on this show. So I utilize the time while I'm sitting in LA traffic to share some info, give you some updates, and answer your questions as they come. All right, so getting back to the real world, because many of you have heard in the past, I did a podcast, and I've touched on this before, that there's a lot of people that don't exist in reality, whether it be in the real world or not existing in reality, and they're looking through their mind's eye too strongly, and it dictates their response and what motivates them to do basically everything they do in every element of their life. And then, of course, you get the even worse online version where they feel that the online social media world is real, and it certainly isn't. And I'm going to give a great example here, and I don't want to go too on this because it was something that was really a waste of my time. It was a drain of energy in the wrong direction, and I feel bad for it because that focus and energy could have been towards something more productive. But it's about a certain dog trainer who I had some words with. I commented on his personal appearance. I got lambasted on Facebook for it because he's such a great guy, because he has a social media following and he's entertaining. And that was fine. I let it go because I really could care less. I have enough clients in the real world who support me enough where I realize that that's not my form, and let a guy like that who isn't even real gain his popularity and let people perceive that he's giving information that helps. And why do I say it now with a little less confidence, where I said, hey, you know what, the guy's a clown, but he is a decent dog trainer, or, you know, a person, I didn't really know his integrity more than just I felt that he shouldn't be calling out other trainers when he didn't know who they are as a person or the actual work they do in the real world. And that's even why I was so hell-bent on trying to get this guy to come see me and see what I do, instead of making his goofy perceptions, making videos and comments about me. And in social media, it makes him look like he's, you know, seen in higher regard than me, who's just some clown who's popping off and whatever. Well, let's talk about how the real world exists, because I actually let it go, but someone had just reached out to me who, they're not a dog trainer, they're someone who's been an observer, who just shed light on the fact that this guy is targeting yet another amazingly female trainer. And then they says, you know, this guy's a misogynist. I've been watching him a lot closer than you, and I really just wanted to support that. You did have people who were on your side when you went through all that with the guy, and a lot of us are seeing what you see in him. Because I had a feeling about the guy, and again, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think maybe he's a good trainer, and he's speaking from experience, and he does a good job, blah, blah, blah. And then this woman sent me a link to his Yelp page up there in Maine. And it really just confirmed everything that I thought about him. He's not a good dude. He's a horrible person if you read the reviews about him. He is definitely a misogynist. He looks down towards women, and he's not a really good trainer because the quality of his work would supersede in his reviews and all the information about him online. And in the real world, he's doing a shit job, and he's really upsetting people. And that's probably why this guy has to focus so much on online and try to create these online Skype training sessions, because in the real world, he's already burnt his bridges in this little tiny market up in wherever in Maine he's located. Yet this guy seems that he's so confident where he's going to take someone. And again, you can go do the homework on me and the reputation I have in the real world with my real world clients here in Los Angeles and compare and contrast. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because really the real world speaks for itself. My client experiences who've worked with me in person versus the ones he's had from the people that he's interacted with, it's night and day, and that's all I need to know. So that's all this person is going to get of my attention and energy. But I did want to just bring this up because a few days ago, it was, I saw what's really going on, and now I have a more definitive interpretation of who this person is. Not a good guy, not a good trainer, and really questionable as far as being a misogynist, which God knows what this guy does when nobody's watching, if he's that quick to talk down the women and treat them like that on an online forum out in the public eye. All right, so with that said, I'm glad I got that off my chest, but I really felt very vindicated. I was like, I don't give a shit how many people perceive me and piled on me. Really look at the proof in the pudding, and that's what upsets me a little bit about how people are so quick to pile on. But if you stood back and observed me for a week with clients and him for a week with clients, and then look at our reputations in the real world, it would be clear as crystal what's going on, and maybe I have some validity in what I was pointing out, that when I said I just don't like the way he looks, I was probably seeing a little bit more into him than the average person did, and I think I was right. All right, so let us move on and talk about something helpful. So let's see. What can we talk about today that would be helpful? You know what? I get a lot of people that they ask me questions about, and I have clients that there's issues with dogs and children and integrating dogs from the same home. I may have touched about the dog thing. I don't think I've on the podcast yet talked much about dogs and kids. Correct me if I'm wrong if you have listened to an episode where I've talked about it, but why not give another take, another reiteration, and another version? All right, so dogs and kids. Generally, it is a great match. Dogs and kids can get along. There's nothing like a little child growing up with their puppy and bonding and sharing their formidable years together. It's amazing. But a lot of times it can go awry. Now, it could be just a combination of the dog having to learn more boundaries, learning to not make such an overexcited, overstimulated association, and gets into this state automatically at some point when around kids, which leads to a lot of your over-exuberant behaviors, not quite aggressive, but jumping on the child, biting on the kid, just reacting too strongly, not knowing physical boundaries or respecting them. And that could lead to something even up to the point of aggression, and that's where sometimes people end up calling me, where it's gone so far, where the dog has become so hypervigilant, because it's usually not an isolated thing where it's just the dog has an issue with a child. It's usually a bigger picture thing. Like I always talk about, these dogs are always too on the case, too reactive, and then they pinpoint some kind of transitional social interaction or just a time where they should be listening as where they're going to act out and show a symptom of this too much independence, too much responsibility when coexisting and sharing environments with their human owners. So that's how far it can get, because some dogs can misinterpret. I have dogs like, well, I don't understand. My dog is fine with my daughter, but when she's swimming in the pool, he tries to attack. Well, I'm like, okay, what are we defining as fine? Because to you, fine where your dog is hinging on every move your child in the family makes, is overreactive, getting too excited, jumping on people, lightly mouthing, being promoted to do all this. And then when there's so much going on with the pool, the dog is in a desperate state, they just lose consciousness, and then you get your reactions that could become aggressive. So we have to start from the foundation up, and a lot of times, as I always talk about, these issues fix themselves. I'm getting too ahead of myself because I don't want to talk about a worst case scenario. I'd like to even talk in a more optimistic front of just how to have your child bond with your dog in a way that would prevent all of what I'm describing here. So coexistence exercises. If it's a very small child, it's going to really be up to the adults to do the training while the other child's around the dog. But even for like little infants where they're crawling around, I always do place training. Well, your child has their place, which is their play mat, and your dog has theirs. And they can learn every time the child's out and about, they can learn to be calmer, focused, and respect the physical boundaries, because you're setting a limit very clearly with your place command. You can do this now even with a child that's a little older, where you can start integrating the walks. A lot of what I do for children that might be, I'd say maybe between 4, 8, 9, depending on the size of the dog and where they're at. We can do a dual hookup where we'll put a leash, a leash on a training collar or a flat collar with the dog, and have the child heel them and do some basic commands. And then myself or the owner, the parent, would put another leash, maybe a longer one, and stand a little further back just as an insurance measure, but to guide through and have the dog create some of this structured walking ability, and even doing place training and showing these leadership qualities, so the child, even though they may come off as someone that the dog can breach and not show as much respect for as they would for an adult, that can be created as well. Now, there's something that I talk about when it comes to children and dogs that it's a little more controversial, and that's child training. There are so many children, and I'll be out in public with a client or even my own dogs who are friendly, and a child will just run right up without even asking, may I pet your dog? And for two reasons I take issue with that. Number two, that's not going to be safe. And you need to teach your child to perceive things other than their own little world, because although their dogs may be friendly and able to handle that, their friends' dogs or dogs they meet in public may not. And they have to learn to have a little more self-awareness. On top of that, it's very disrespectful to teach someone to just barge into somebody's personal life out in public until they ask if it is appropriate. And that goes way beyond the realm of dog ownership. And it's just teaching a child how to stay safe, how to not have their impulses drive them, right? Because I talk about that a lot. That's what's causing so many issues, is that we're getting blind by our emotions and impulses and not objectively seeing what's going on, whether it be dogs or human relationships or otherwise in the world. So that's a big part of it. And sometimes I'll even get to the point where I'll say, hey, where's your parent here? I took to the, hey, don't you tell your child to ask first? That could have been a real dangerous situation, and you thought it was all fun and great because of your own perception, thinking that because you have a dog that might have an issue, every other dog in the world is going to suit that. Or maybe this dog isn't used to children, and your child can help us with the training, but we have to do it in a skillful way so we don't undermine what we're trying to work on here, because we have a right to be in public with our dogs. Blah, 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 right? I've done the Advocate for Your Dog podcast and all these things, and, just people being a little bit more respectful, yet communicating, and then sometimes we can engage and connect even with people out in the public and your children who can help us with the dogs. Okay, child training lesson over. We'll save that for a more different podcast. Maybe I'll do on child rearing and training in itself. So really what I want to just basically make as a point here is that children and dogs, generally it works out fine, but some dogs, whether it be a puppy or a dog that's just developed some bad habits or a new adult rescue dog into your life, you might have to do some work before it's just a free-for-all, because sometimes too much freedom can lead to some real bad situations. All right, so hope I made my point there. As you guys know, I keep these short and sweet here because I'm on my own. I'm in the car. I'm distracted by podcasts, texts coming in, my own anxieties and my ADD potentials. So I just want to make sure that I get the info here out succinctly. I stay on topic, don't go too off on a tangent, and keep you entertained and informed. So again, if I'm doing that, please don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. You have to review it here on iTunes. I've got 12 reviews, and it's been for like 6 months, and it's getting played out. So let's go, guys. Just put a 5-star. Let people know how I'm doing, if I helped you. And definitely send me a message. Let me know how I'm doing. Send me a question about your dogs. dogtrainingla@gmail.com. And of course, if you're in the Los Angeles area, contact me, dogtrainingla.com. I'd love to help you. Have a great day, guys. Get out there, train your dog. Bye.